Hi, my name is Michael Giannichini. This is a project for Intro to Social and Political Philosophy. My intentions are to describe not only who should rule, but also how he or she should rule, as in what kind of government can fully allow the best ruler to have the power to do best for the country. First, I am going to discuss the forms of government that someone can hold power in, then give some advantages and disadvantages of each type, and ultimately conclude with the best type of government. The most familiar will be a democracy, which is supposed to be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It is supposed to be a land that uses government to focus on the well being of all people, not just those in power. In this form of government, the people have the power to elect officials into power by voting. Most people seem to agree that democracies are the most justifiable governments, mostly based on these simple assumptions of what a democracy is, and we'll touch more on this later. A dictatorship is when there is one almighty ruler, while a tyrant is a dictator that uses his power for evil, is seen as cruel, and abuses his ability to be free of law, order, and consequences. An example of a tyrant would be Adolf Hitler or Joseph Stalin. Now, I don't want to confuse you, so when I say dictator, think benevolent dictator, one that is morally good and focuses on the well being of all people within the state or country. An example of this would be Josip Broz Tito from Yugoslavia. An absolute monarchy is when the only possible leaders are blood relatives of whom is currently in power, such as Saudi Arabia or pre Magna Carta in Great Britain. Lastly, an aristocracy is when there is a small group of the best leaders that share power between them. This is also known as an oligarchy. A dictator, monarch, or a group of aristocrats that have absolute power certainly do not have to wait around for decisions to be made. Whether for their benefit or the people's, their decisions are not based on the majority's opinions, which means that the minorities cannot be discriminated against solely based by the people. When one person or a small group of people have power, it is possible to create an emancipated society, which, according to Karl Marx, is the only possible way to achieve equality within a state society. This in turn leads to true liberty for the people. Dictatorships, absolute monarchies, and aristocracies create very strong governments that have the main goal of prosperity for their state. They are efficient and their decisions take effect immediately due to having no opposition or critics. What they say goes no matter what. This can expedite good policies that lead to greatness. The disadvantages of rule by one or few elites are often based on assumptions that these people are evil or would do evil things. You can't ignore the possibility, especially seeing as how it has happened even in recent history. Democracy has several disadvantages that are clear to see to those that pay attention. Decisions get delayed due to petty disputes, typically being due to the proposed bill being drafted by someone of the opposite party, which can be seen in the United States every time Congress is in session. Several people in the United States simply cannot decide between the two parties, which is displayed in voter turnout, so they simply don't vote. On top of that, not everybody can vote. Elected officials make all the decisions, so do the people really have power? Due to rapid changes each election, the government isn't stable, and constant switching from mostly conservative to mostly liberal leads to massive changes, for better or worse. However, there are definitely positives to a democracy. The fact that it can change so quickly can, in a way, be a good thing, as it erases the need for violence to solve problems. Representatives are elected often, so voters' interests can be reflected as they change, and officials that do poorly in office can be quickly replaced. Also, in a democracy, the state cannot discriminate in any way, which in a way leads to equality, although it does not and cannot make the whole population believe in it or inject it into societal norms. After thoughtful consideration between the forms of government, monarchy must be eliminated. As seen when King Edward VI was crowned at the age of 9, one great king can always have a terrible ruler of a son. Democracies tend to have disputes between parties or even states versus states. This can make policymakers enter a stalemate. This can be seen by looking at how many bills were passed during President Barack Obama's first term in office. In the first 2 years of his term, there was a Democratic majority in Congress. In those 2 years, they enacted 385 laws. In the final 2 years of the president's first presidential term, Congress had a Republican majority that only enacted 284 laws, so 101 less. Democracies simply do not act efficiently, largely due to conflict of interest between the two parties. Therefore, democracy is eliminated. An aristocracy, in turn, could eventually lead to the same thing. Even if the small group collectively thinks alike, disagreements could be detrimental to the state, forcing me to eliminate this option as well. The last standing form of government is a dictatorship. However, this can only work if the leader is one that Plato would call an expert ruler. Otherwise, it would be a tyranny. With the correct training, education, and drive to achieve justice and prosperity in his or her state, a dictator would be the best option and the fairest to the people because true equality and liberty could be established and enforced. A truly great leader with nothing in his or her way could achieve a utopia or a perfect society that other forms of government could not create due to opposing critics or greedy politicians and businessmen. In this case, dictatorship is not only justifiable, but the preferred and most attractive way to achieve a means to have the perfect ruler.